Hello, welcome back to the Art of Footsies. This is my approach to approaching. Machibu wrote a Guilty Gear article that talks about okiwaza, atewaza, and sashikaishi. The article pretty much describes the three sides of the triangle. The article describes sashikaishi as waiting for the opponent to make a move and reacting to it. Sounds like whiff punishing to me, so what's the next step? Atewaza, doing a move that will hit a waiting opponent. The article gives an example of dashing, but this applies to simply walking as well. Let's recap Chapter 2's tactic. You approach, poke, and wait to whiff punish. If your opponent uses this tactic against you, then you know exactly where they're looking. Since they're waiting, focused on looking for that ghost normal, you can catch them sitting like a duck. So we can wish all day that our character gets longer, better pokes, but if we know our opponent is going to be waiting, they may not expect us to approach before counterpoking. This is what seasoned players do, and this is where footsies really begin. Two players that are aware of the ground game tactics. To avoid being whiff punished, we must approach to ensure that our counterpoke does not whiff, negating their option to whiff punish us, beating out the first side of the triangle. Now, on the flip side of that, to ensure that their attack whiffs, we must retreat to an even farther space to wait. We must preemptively decide that our opponent may approach before counterpoking. Wait a second, did they just retreat? Did they just back off? They just gave us space? Take it. Street Fighter has corners, sometimes every inch counts. Once you've cornered an opponent, you've nearly taken away 1/3 of their options. They can no longer retreat or whiff punish, right? Very easily. The offensive player can approach with confidence that their attacks are not going to whiff. This is what makes the corner so dangerous. This is what makes approaching so important. Taking the space that your opponent's given up. If your opponent's constantly focused on whiff punishing, then they are constantly waiting or retreating. Eventually they'll be cornered, as long as you're approaching and taking that space. Now outside of the corner, you and your opponent are going to have each other's pokes in mind, and that's when you start doing the dance, right? Constantly approaching and retreating from that normal's range. So replicating approaching in training mode is pretty simple, but it's kind of stale. So I recommend practicing this stuff in casual sets with live opponents. And then over time, you're going to strengthen your intuition of when the opponent is going to be waiting or hesitant. Like before, I mentally draw a line where they are, walk in and poke them there. If I think they're going to retreat, I mentally draw a line where I think they're going to be and poke them there, ensuring that my pokes don't whiff and I'm not whiff punished. Once you've consistently approached before poking, establishing where you're going to walk in and press that button, you may catch your opponent hesitating. If that's your prediction, then walk right up and throw him.
And now 21 seconds on the clock for Lauren. Oh my god, he was frozen!
Approaching applies to very close range as well, so if we know our opponent is waiting on defense, then we can start to stagger our buttons or inch forward, right? So that's my approach to approaching. You can either approach and poke with the normals you have, or you can spend your days wishing for longer ones.
Oh, a man can dream, though. A man can dream.
Machibu